All right. Hello. Hello. I apologize for hopping on late. I completely forgot how to log on. So I apologize for your wait and thank you so much for your patience. Um, so today I wanted to discuss um, less input, more output. And this sounds like an oxymoron, right? It sounds like hopping or listening to one of those infomercials, right? But the amazing thing is that this is possible. And when we understand that process, it really frees up so much brain energy and also our time, right? Because we are trained from a very early age to think that time is the measurement by which we use on how much output we're going to get out of something, right? But if you have studied any physics at all, you'll know and you've learned that that's not necessarily true, right? One of the things that you learn when you learn some of the basic rules of physics is that, say for instance, you are trying to lift something, right? You can lift it in different ways, right? Some ways require more energy, some require less. So we can actually accomplish something and whatever we need to say lift, right? If we need to lift something 7 feet off the ground, we can do it in different ways. And they require different amounts of energy, different amounts of input, right? But we get the same output. So that similar line of thinking, right? When we think of relative, like how much are we putting in, right? We can actually get more output to the energy that we're currently putting into life, living day to day living. Um, so, one of the important things to notice about this is just even the self awareness to understand where are you putting a lot of your energy. And in this way, it might actually be tied to time, right? Because as we go along in time, we do expend a certain amount of energy. So, um, what I would say is so helpful is to do an audit of where you actually are spending your time and energy. Um, and how much are you getting out of the time that you put into something, right? How efficient are you going along and living your daily life? And we can scale this to talk about larger projects, but really, so much of what we avoid can be fixed in the things that we do day to day, right? So when we think of it's almost like depositing into an account, right? If you deposit what we might think are small amounts, right, each day or each week or each month, it's going to add up, right? Um, and usually making a large deposit all at once is not something that we can do. If we could do it, we would do it, right? But most of us don't because we never have that amount of money at any one given time to just deposit right away, right? So energy is kind of like that too. If you understand how to pace yourself to get to a goal, right? And this is like our daily input of energy. Where are we putting it? You will be able to create enough energy to get to your, or you will have put in enough energy, enough input to get to where you need to be to get your output. But if we're looking to create it all at once, right, it just actually may not be possible. So if we think about, say, for instance, um, I'm I'm petite. I'm 5 feet tall, right? And so if I stretch my arm out, I will never, ever, ever hit 8 feet, right? I can't reach something 8 feet. It's just not possible for me. Um, However, if I build a foundation that I can step up on, I can make it to that 8 feet, right? If I can build something with daily habits, like if I can build a foundation, like I think of like, just maybe cementing a little step that's 6 inches tall, right? And I do that over several, like even the week, right? Or even the work week, right? I will have created enough of a foundation that I can stand on to now reach something that's 8 feet tall. And so this is why when we do these audits, right, we want to look at our daily habits first. It's not usually, it's something minute a lot of the times. It's something very subtle. If it was something very large, we would probably have noticed it by now. And also, what we do when we are looking for the big fix is our brain is wanting to kind of be lazy about it. It wants a big fix, right? Just a one and done. Instead, we need to understand the subtleties of what we're doing day to day. Where are we putting our daily energy, right? Um, and when you do an audit of your energy, where are you putting the most energy into? What you want to notice is, what are you getting out of that activity, right? And so I think of math, right? If you are um, almost like the greater than, less than, and equal sign, it's a very good way to gauge how efficiently you're using your energy, right? Now, if we are working for a very, very short term goal, sometimes our input is going to be greater than our output, right? So, for instance, I think of sometimes planning for a party. Very often, the input into that planning far exceeds the time of the actual event, right? So, if you have planned like a birthday party or a wedding or some big event, you'll know there's maybe days, weeks, months, years of planning, right? But the event is only for the day, or at most maybe like a couple of days. Um, and that is fine for events that don't occur very often, right? But when we're talking about daily habits, right, we need to make sure that it's equal or our output is greater. If not, we're going to create an energy deficit, right? So when you do these audits, really notice where your energy deficits are, because this is really where you have such a great opportunity to correct what you are doing, right? Well, not correct it as in there's one way to do it or a wrong way, but maybe not correct, but find a more efficient manner in which to do, to go about the way you expend your energy on a daily basis. Um, and when you are able to find these subtleties, you'll actually notice that when you start to find your energy deficits, and you can find maybe even 2 or 3 places where your energy deficits occur, when you add up all of that deficit, it actually has a great impact on your daily living, your daily life, right? And just imagine if you could um, not even have more output at that point, right? But just even breaking even, right? So if you're at, say, And so when I'm talking about deficits, what I let me preface that. When I'm talking about energy, how much input, how much output, I usually use a scale, like a Likert scale, if you're familiar with that, like a zero to 10 or 1 to 10 scale. Um, how much energy are you putting into it? And um, what are you getting out of it? That's how I usually measure my input and my output. So for instance, it could be something like I would like to work on a um, journaling, right? How much energy does journaling take on a scale of 1 to 10? And how do I feel afterwards? What am I getting out of it? Right. And sometimes we are going to overall, not overall, but individually have some tasks that the input is greater than the output, right? But we're looking for an overall balance, right? So if I do my journaling and it lights me up and I'm like, I feel awesome afterwards, right? I'm getting a positive output, right? But if I say, for instance, am doing something super tedious, maybe that takes a lot of energy. So for me, this is this is silly, but really for me, it's a huge energy drain. Is I don't mind washing dishes, but I really dislike washing utensils. To me, the way I see it is they take up, I don't know, like a handful, like I could wrap my hand around it, right? And that's how much space it takes. This is just how my brain works. How much space that it takes. But to wash each individual one, I'm exhausted afterwards. And it takes so long. So, and in fact, a little side funny story is my husband went on a trip one time, and I think it was probably one of the first times he had traveled. And at this time, I think I had two young kids, and he was gone maybe like 3 or 4 days. And getting used to him being gone in itself was really challenging. And these utensils built up, and I literally left the utensils. I washed all the big dishes, but I literally left the utensils for him to wash. It just, for me, um, was not worth washing all of that. Like the time that it took was not worth it. I needed the time to spend with my kids watching over them. And so that is just how I define my input and output at that point. It was just a really energy draining task for me. Um, and on a daily basis, I've actually streamlined that. So I actually have a bucket, soapy water, and my family does not pre-rinse their dishes really regularly. And so my agreement with them is that they at least take their utensils and put it in there so that it could at least soften all the food and it doesn't get hard. And then I actually don't wash the utensils. I have someone else do it for me. So this is really how we can, it's silly, but for me, it was actually a great expenditure of energy. And I didn't want to be doing this day to day. So I had to find a different solution, because even after they soaked all their utensils and, washing them was pretty quick, it still was more energy than I wanted to expend. So then I started to pay my kids to wash the dishes. They have other chores they have to do that they don't get paid for, but that one was a paid chore. So that's how I decided to change that shift in energy. And really, that time um, I get to now use on something that I get more output from. And actually, for me, I use that time a lot to take my, kind of my mid or like evening break for a little bit. And that allows me to now go through the evening a lot more efficiently because I'm not tired and avoiding doing different things with my kids, which actually makes everything take longer. I'm there, I've rested, I'm present with my kids. So when I say, okay, guys, it's time to spend time together, we do it. I'm not on my phone and trying to avoid them. It's like, okay, I'm present. And the rest of the evening goes relatively well. And I'm able to, send them off to bed at a decent time. And end the day when I should. Whereas if I don't get that little bit of a break to myself, I start to buffer and find other things to do. And then get to their requests or get to eventually spend time with them. But then it's like an hour later than I had planned. And then I'm going to bed later. I'm more tired in the morning. So these are the little places that we can really make what seems like a small choice, but a choice that's really going to change the way that we input our energy and what we get, and then the output that we get. Um, and if you are looking for a way to better organize your time. So when I mentioned, I was willing to, I still pay my kids to wash the dishes. Um, that's called delegating a task, right? So when we say less input, more output, it's not just always about you, right? It's also deciding what doesn't need to be done, what can be done still, but more efficiently, what can be delegated, right? Um, and then sometimes some things will need to be done right then and there. But these are areas where we can change our efficiency. And a great resource that I found to help me really decide on what category this fits in my activity, right, is something called the Eisenhower matrix. It's I believe it was Dwight D. Eisenhower who came up with it. And I don't quite remember the complete history about it, but you can find it online very easily. And there's a lot of graphics available. And it's a quadrant that shows you how you are using your time based on the importance of an event and the priority it has in the list of things that you need to do. And you kind of plug in your activities to this matrix, and it really helps you decide what tasks should be, if you're not already right delegated, which you probably aren't, and that's why your input and output are not working for you. What tasks can wait? And what I mean by wait is I think of texting and emailing because that's just so salient to all of us. These are tasks that 95% of the time you can actually group together and do all at once rather than as they come in, right? So for me, I actually have the notifications for my email turned off. If I'm waiting for an email that is that important, I will go check for it, right? Um, Other than that, the email does not need to be um, does not need to be addressed at the moment that it comes in. That's a huge, for me, that is a huge mental energy drain, right? Every time that email comes in, it's like ding, ding, and you're paying attention and you're also losing focus on what you were already doing. Um, Texts probably could go this way too. I still get my texts, but I will say that my notifications are on silent. So I will see them when I pick my phone up because it shows on the screen, but I don't hear every bing either. And the reason I say this is, we think, well, I have to answer the email, I have to answer the text anyhow. So what does it matter when I do it? It does matter because every time you switch activities, there's something called a switching cost, meaning that there is energy lost in that, right? So that is exactly why so for instance, I wanted to look up something on Google, right? Maybe how many ounces are in a kilogram? I often use you would think I memorized all the conversions by now, but weights, I'm always still using my phone to convert. But, and I might say, okay, how many ounces are in a kilogram? I get my phone, I open it up, and I see that my social media is opened, and then I get distracted. I get off my phone. I haven't found how many ounces in a kilogram. I go back to doing, I don't know, back to cooking. And I think, oh, I totally was distracted. I didn't even get the information I wanted to. Now I got to go back, right? There was this switching cost, right? Or even if you do decide to check your email, right? Usually we tell ourselves, I'm just going to check the one email, right? But then you see the other emails that came in, and you say, oh, actually, these three need to be looked at. Oh, I'm already looking at that one, so I'll look at this one too, right? And then you step out of the email, and maybe you've forgotten what you actually were doing, right? And so, in terms of time, there is this switching cost. We actually lose efficiency the more that we switch between tasks. So, what you can do is set aside time in your day. Now, it may change it may change daily if your routine changes daily, but if you have a relatively regular routine, you can set the time on that. So, for instance, maybe it's, 11:30. Maybe you have lunch at, 12 to 1, and it helps you to feel relaxed, to make sure that the emails are taken care of right before lunch, right? So you could enjoy lunch and just be present. So that would mean, 11 or 11:30, whatever, however long it usually takes you to address your email. And then you set aside that time to address your email. And then maybe 4 o'clock before you leave work, right? And then you just set this time aside so that you take care of these tasks just then and there. And your switching cost is only, if you think like a one, you're only having one instance of a switching cost, and you're not having to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so when we find these little subtle details, this is really where we have the opportunity to increase our efficiency, right? Less output, more, or less input, more output, right? So if we audit our day, how much time we really spend in email, it might actually surprise you how much time is used. It might be you thought, okay, it takes me 45 minutes in my day, but really it might be taking you an hour 15, an hour and a half, right? Because you're not calculating all the switching costs. You think, oh, it just took me 5 minutes to read the email and respond to it. but what are all the extra parameters that happen on the outside? What did you lose focus on as you did this the first time? What did you lose focus on the second time, right? What rabbit hole did you go down because you decided to check the email at, maybe 9:30 rather than waiting to your 11 o'clock usual time? So these are so helpful to help you, or the Eisenhower matrix really helps you decide how to categorize the things that you do. So what my example was are on the things that you still need to do, but you don't need to do them as they come in. You can set aside time and really increase your efficiency, right? So text and emails are those activities that we switch in and out of, in and out of, in and out of throughout the day, and really, really drain our efficiency. So those are ones that you can modify how you decide to interact with them. Then, or not so much a modification in that you still are answering the email, but like how you distribute your time. Then there are those tasks that we completely don't need to engage in. Delete. And on the Eisenhower matrix, it'll say delete this task. And so these are things like clicking on all the junk email. I will actually unsubscribe purposely. Like I'll set aside time to unsubscribe to emails because it is really super distracting. Number one, when I open up my phone, because I don't answer my emails as they come, I don't pay attention to them. And, when I have 50, number one, I have to wait till it loads. I hate waiting for things to load. Number two, they come in this like weird order, and then I'll catch one down here. And even though it's not what I was looking for, so I'll scroll down for it, and then forget about what email I was actually looking for, right? So again, we lose efficiency in this when we're distracted by things that we don't need to do. So I will unsubscribe to certain emails, especially if I've this is one I'm super guilty of, is I will buy something that I love, or I'll find a company that I really love, and either because I bought something or they had an offer, I'll have subscribed to the email. And because in that season of life, the product or that company is so appealing, I keep opening the email, right? Like, oh, what else? I'm not really going to buy anything. It's just a waste of my time. And so that sends a whole nother cascade, because typically, right, when you start to click on those, they start sending you even more email from that company. And so this is where I lose time. And I can do that with multiple products. So for me, it's noticing those. I just have to unsubscribe and not go down those rabbit holes. Now comes the category of delegate. So delegate is actually where a lot of the activities we engage in should be categorized. We should be delegating a lot more throughout our day. And again, this doesn't mean we're not still responsible for the overall outcome. That doesn't mean we're not involved, but we don't always necessarily have to do it from beginning to end. Now, this may take a mindset switch or modification on how you perceive how you want something done, right? So I think of cleaning the table for us. My youngest cleans the table. It's not always done the way I would do it, or the finished product doesn't always look the way I would want it to, right? But if I add up every single day the input of energy to wipe the table, right, versus just coming along once in a while and either just not letting it bother me, there's that choice, or, modifying what she has done the times that it does need modification, right? So cleaning up, maybe if she missed a couple smudges here and there, that energy is, gosh, I don't even know what fold less than the amount of energy for me to clean the table every single day. And so I delegate that activity. And so, um, and I think even like in business, right? Why do we hire people to help us with certain aspects of business? It's because overall it increases the efficiency of our business, which is what allows us to grow. So delegating is something that is probably going to be the one that is hardest for people to do, but also for you to also understand that this is where your area of most growth will probably occur. And then we do have things sometimes that we do need to do then and there, right? And these are often the ones that would say have the most input, or not the most input, but have an uneven exchange. What we input is less than we get the output. But those are the very rare things that we do, rare occurrences, right? So, like I was talking about big events, right? It's not something that happens on a regular basis. And so, what I was talking about earlier about even getting yourself up to, even with your energy and input and output is just imagine if you're running at a deficit of, I will say 5 every single day. Over just the work week, that's a deficit of 25, right? That is tiring. Over a month, that's a deficit of 100. So guard your time, right? Or actually more your energy, very guard it with respect, right? This is about you. This is about how you can grow, right? It's not saying so much who you are as a person, but where are your areas of growth? And this will really tell you so much about your areas of growth. So, again, that's the Eisenhower matrix. And that was just the tool that helped me organize what I should be doing with my time, what categories it goes into, right? Now, the process to actually delegate, the process to actually delete something um, are, these are going to need to be addressed individually, right? So all the things that you need to delegate, obviously each one you're going to have to decide how you want to delegate them, right? And then the things that you need to delete, you have to decide like how are you going to delete them. But this gave me the overall framework to really catch where my efficiency was being lost. And what I also use is a satisfaction scale. So for me, what it looks like is I will gauge an activity as to how satisfying it is to engage in that activity, right? So, for instance, what's something I do? Cleaning my floors. Um, I I just get really great satisfaction out of having clean floors. And so for me, what I get out of clean floors again, I use a scale usually of 1 to 10, is I really get a satisfaction. It's embarrassing to admit this, but almost like a 9 out of clean floors. Now, I then use that as my gauge as to how worthy this task is, how much energy I want to put into it, right? And then I look at the energy I'm actually putting into it, right? So when I need to clean my floors, I get a really high level of satisfaction. So I am willing to put more input into it, because if not, it actually requires a lot of brain energy throughout my day, because I'm always noticing when I see a crumb in the corner, or actually, it's not usually a crumb, it's usually several crumbs, and I'll be distracted by it. And it's just not worth me being distracted by it. Every time I walk through the house, I'll notice it, right? And it just creates this dissatisfaction within me, this almost like itch to go clean it up. And so you can measure, you can use a satisfaction scale. Then, when you actually engage in the task, how much satisfaction do you actually get after you engage in that task? Because it's sometimes completely different than how much satisfaction you want to get out of it. So I think about kind of back to the utensils, right? How much satisfaction should I get out of having clean utensils, right? What is my goal? I just want to be neutral. Like, they're done. Great. We have clean utensils. But for me, literally, could we even go backwards? It's like not even a positive on there. It is not a positive experience for me. So I would put it like maybe at a 1, right? So my satisfaction afterwards is a 1. My satisfaction that I think I should get out of it is a 5. There's a great disparity. And so I know what I'm currently doing is not working, right? And so even when I decided, okay, I'm going to have this bucket of soapy water, you guys all put your dishes or your utensils in there. So when I clean them, it's pretty fast, right? I'm not having to soak and scrape and all of this. Since my satisfaction still was literally at a 1, it wasn't increasing my level of efficiency to the point where it felt efficient. It still felt like I was running at a deficit. And so I just completely delegated it. It's something I don't even have to think about, and I get great satisfaction from that. And so what I use actually for that time, right, and efficiency, like I do think about the fact that, not only is it time, but I also am putting out another, valuable resource is paying my kids to think about how much satisfaction do I get out of paying them. It still is a much huge greater output than input, right? Because not only do I get to now relax, I get a more efficient evening schedule. And I'm also taking away from having to do or engage in my negative experience of washing the dishes and or washing the utensils. So it sounds tedious, like I said, but really when we notice these things and we're able to address them, it actually gives us the space to enjoy just sitting there, enjoy engaging in another activity, because we have the energy to do it, right? Because people frequently say time, and they are somewhat related, but really most of the time people are talking about energy, right? Um, so for instance, I was supposed to go pick up something yesterday, and I was super tired. Literally, the drive is, I think it was half a mile. The turnaround time is 10 minutes. But what went through my head is, oh my goodness, I have to get dinner on the table. It's Friday, we do family Friday nights, and my husband wasn't there. So he's usually the one who provides all the fun. And so the way my energy was going is, oh, I've got to now provide the fun. I usually provide like the framework for the fun, right? All the practical things. And he actually injects the fun. Well, not only did I have to do the practical part, which actually I don't mind, I had to do the fun part. And that actually takes energy from me. And so picking up, taking the 10 minutes, right? It was only, I don't know, I think it was three something, right? I usually start cooking dinner at 4, between 4 and 5. I actually had, I think it was like 3:24. I had more than 10 minutes. I literally wasn't going to do anything specific with that time between the time I realized, oh, I got to go pick this thing up and the time I had to start dinner. I had 36 minutes, right? But I told myself in terms of time, I don't have the time. I just don't have the time. I got to get dinner started. It really wasn't about the time. It was the energy that it was going to take, my satisfaction that I was going to get from picking up that item, um, versus the amount of satisfaction to actually go get the item did not match. Now, I ended up getting it because I had told the person that I was going to pick it up by a certain time, but it was just an example of how the small things, right, um, can have a huge impact on the way that we see our time and how we start to use our time, which really affects our efficiency and really has to do about the energy that we're putting in and what we're getting out of it. It's really about the energy, not so much about the literal time, but we conflate the two because they are linked, and we're literally told from the time that we're little that those two go hand in hand, right? um and so we have to start to kind of mess with that idea, like, is that true? How is it not true, right? And decide how we can separate time and energy and realize that we can actually be more efficient, right, with actually less time, right? That's a challenging thought. How can you actually be, from where you are, more efficient, not even with the same amount of time, but with less time, right? That's where ultimately we want um to try to be. um and that's kind of like the journey we want to take. um so when I'm talking about input and output, right, I'm really talking about energy. And huge for me personally is levels of satisfaction with what I'm doing, right? Because we tend to think that because someone says something is important, we should have this like huge sense of satisfaction from it, where that's not always necessarily true. And just because something is important doesn't mean we need to do it from beginning to end, right? We can engage in all of it. We can engage in parts of it, or we can completely actually delegate it, right? I think of like interior decorating, right? Um, to some people, that's a huge, important thing to them. But the actual process is not them doing it all. They might hire an interior decorator, right? And I'm bringing this up because I just realized like that might be on my list of to do things. I love aesthetics. Um, and for me, I love working in a relatively neat space. And I like it pretty streamlined. I don't like a lot of things here or there. And and I'm a terrible decorator. And so it looks like, for me, it looks like the absence of any decoration because that's just the way my brain works. And but it is important to me. And um I was kind of going through the house the other day and I realized, oh, I'm spending so much time thinking about it and trying to do this or that, when really the process I'm not really interested in. I don't feel a great sense of satisfaction from actually engaging in the decorating part. I just want the end product. Right. And so for me, it was just delegating, or in my plans to completely delegate that whole process. I just want the finished product. It's important to me, but I don't need to be engaged in the whole thing. I mean, I might want to see what the plan is for the end result, but all the small little details I don't need to be involved in. And so these are different parameters for you to kind of play with on how to, change your input and your output, really seeing what you're getting out from the way you put your energy in and what you're getting out from it. Um, and so I hope this blesses you and really gives you a different way to think about what you're doing. And it doesn't mean a complete overhaul of your life. That's so often what people think, right? When you're saying, oh, you need to like audit your time. No, it's just catching these little things here or there that kind of have, just like Life Coach University's um, overall idea of a ripple effect, passing it on, right? Paying it forward, is when you catch these little things, it's going to have a ripple effect in terms of how your time and efficiency is used in your whole entire day and like basically daily living your life, right? So these have been so helpful to me, and have made such a great impact on the way that I live my life day to day, and how I have been able over the years to increase my levels of satisfaction without having to exhaust myself to get there. So with that, I want to remind you that this webinar is part of the Life Coaches University's Pay It Forward program. And so what we ask of you is to pay it forward in a way that touches someone else. And it doesn't have to look like a coaching session. It can be in a different way. How would you like to pay it forward to somebody else? The other thing that we greatly value is your feedback. And you can give your feedback by emailing hello@lifecoachuniversity.com. And yeah, share with us your experience from this webinar, from how you paid it forward, what was your experience, and what was your ripple effect. Thank you for being here with me. I really appreciate your time. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next month.